All right, there's something called the Van Allen radiation belt, and when Buzz Aldrin was asked about it, he didn't know what it was. Well, what it is pretty horrifying. It makes it so that human beings, right now, they can't figure out how to get human beings through the Van Allen radiation belt, which circles our Earth.
The Van Allen radiation belt is just part of the Earth's magnetic field where particles tend to accumulate. It's not around the ecliptic plane of the Earth, it's around the magnetic equator.
No one could have known that no one can go to the moon, that we're in a prison called the Van Allen belt that no one will ever tell you, because NASA, the reason this all works is because it's a new religion. You know, out there in the cosmos, and it's all bullshit. We can't leave.
It's not enough to kill you that quickly. Even if they were to go through the center of the belt with the highest radiation flux, they're going through it in like an hour and a half. It's not a big deal. They would probably get, I don't know, 15 rad, piss all, basically like 3 or 4 years worth of background radiation exposure.
We still can't get through the Van Allen belt, guys. There's 2 Van Allen belts. There's one that's the first one is between 500 miles and 500 kilometers and 2,000 kilometers. Most satellites, I'm not a flat earther. Not that I have any disrespect to those guys. They have some compelling points, but most satellites are below that, 400 kilometers above space. But 500 to 2,000 is charged protons and all this shit that just rips flesh apart. Neutrons, stuff it rips apart everything. It's horrifying.
The Van Allen radiation belt isn't that radioactive. It's not the kind of radioactivity that is like unshieldable within the weight margins of something like a spacecraft. It's all shit trapped that's been vomited out by the sun. It's the solar wind that's trapped. It's solar particles. It's mostly protons, but it's also electrons, and there's like a small amount of antiparticles from like fucking interstellar bullshit. But they're charged particles, right? They're not like unreacting like gamma rays. They're not neutrons. They don't penetrate for shit. So like 1 millimeter or like maybe half a centimeter, if you want to get crazy, of aluminum plate stops all the fucking beta particles, electrons basically, and it stops almost all of the protons. But yeah, just a thin sheet of aluminum is enough to shield probably like 50-60% of that radiation. It's not nuclear reactor radiation that's penetrating like feet of fucking reinforced concrete.
It's nonsense. It's crazy. All right, after that, you have another Van Allen radiation belt that goes like 40,000 kilometers, and it's impossible to gauge, so you can't even fly around it.
The Earth is tilted, so you have basically there's something called the ecliptic plane, and then you've got the celestial plane. The magnetic equator and the geologic equator are different. They're off by like a number of degrees. So when they were orbiting the Earth in their translunar injection parking orbit, they basically are able to boost out of Earth's orbit and miss almost all of the Van Allen radiation belt. It's basic understanding. Like they were talking about these belts of radiation for decades before they launched the Apollo.
Researchers from the Free University of Amsterdam doubted the rock was from the moon and began testing. The test concluded it was petrified wood.
The fucking moon rock's being made out of wood. I don't remember where that story came from, but I think it is true. I've heard this story from a bunch of people. But if I had to guess, I would say it's some retarded bureaucrat or diplomat. It's like, I'm going to do a nice thing for the stupid Dutch lady. Fucking give her a damn moon rock. It's fucking... Google image a petrified piece of wood. It's fucking hilarious.
But this is what I found fascinating. While working his farm near Lebanon, Ohio, he was jumping off the back of a grain truck and his wedding ring got caught in the wheel, tearing off the tip of his finger. That's a CIA move.
What the fuck does that mean? It's a CIA move? Basically, he doesn't know what ring degloving is. It's one of the most common industrial accidents. It's when your ring gets caught in a piece of machinery and it tears your finger skin off. It's supposed to be like one of the worst things that can happen to you because it's very hard to like put all the blood vessels back together and like put your skin back on and shit.
I don't know. Like this new special that I'm releasing, you guys are going to love it. The whole premise is that I stopped watching porn and I replaced porn with conspiracy theory videos, which is true.
God, it really makes me question how much porn he was watching. Because in order for the, equal and opposite reaction to be to go this far into conspiracy bullshit, like he had so much like fucking cum rage. He must have been just fucking pumping his cock.
So they're brilliant and retarded simultaneously. They're so smart and innovative that they could send people to the moon, but yet they're so stupid they erased all the tapes. Like NASA said that they reused the tapes because that's how liars operate. Liars have to go farther than they have to.
Yeah, man, it's the fucking government. They fuck shit up all the time. They find stuff at NASA all the time. They find historical videos, historical photographs, and it's all because it's filed in the wrong place. And by the way, in the government's defense, we're talking telemetry tapes. Like literally like radar data. Like we're not talking like fucking important it's not like they deleted a reel of Ansel Adams photography or something. It's just like telemetry, like radar data. It's like if you looked at it, you would be like, what the fuck is this? It's just a string of numbers, like comma delimited numbers. So it's not like they lost the fucking footage of the moon landing. All that shit's recorded at a bunch of different broadcast studios. And not only that, but the tapes they were using, it's not like fucking reel-to-reel tape, like shitty like iron oxide magnetic tape you would have in a fucking VHS player. It's like super high quality. It's like what they're using it's like barium oxide, iron, ferrite, LTO tape. It's insanely expensive, and it's a big wide piece of tape. So yeah, they're gonna fucking reuse it.
The heat in space is very, very high. So what is the temperature in some of these zones? 2,000 degrees, right? So let me get the facts right here. 2,000 degrees. Where is it? I don't have it open right now. But it's 2,000 degrees. It's very easy to look up. This isn't a conspiracy theory.
Again, he's making, I wouldn't say it's like an elementary school mistake, but it's fucking pretty embarrassing. He's confusing like thermal flux and fucking like absolute temperature. So the kinetic theory of temperature is you have a bunch of bouncing ping pong balls in a container, and you're just measuring the momentum of all the ping pong balls in aggregate, and that's your temperature. What happens in space is you have like one ping pong ball in your container, and it's going faster than shit because it just got shot out of the sun. The kinetic energy of that one ping pong ball is insanely high, but in reality, you would have to have a thermocouple like the size of a fucking grain of like dust, or like a little tiny little speck of dust, in order for it to transfer that energy onto a sensor and actually generate a reading like that. It's like inconceivably dumb to say that space is 2,000 degrees, you'll burn to death. It's really stupid.
I'm dead serious. This is happening right now. It requires 5 feet of lead to keep the radiation out.
I gotta stop there. 5 feet of lead is fucking absurd. A nuclear reactor doesn't even have 5 feet of lead. They have about 4 feet of reinforced concrete. You could put 5 feet of lead in between you and a raging nuclear reactor. Like the fucking shielding in a nuclear submarine isn't 5 fucking feet. A fucking AP-1000 reactor, a big fatty pressurized water reactor, like the newest design, it doesn't even use 5 feet of concrete. I believe it's about 4 feet of concrete, and they take various aggregates and steel filings, and they make the concrete really heavy, but still, it's not even fucking 5 feet.
So this is Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin. They're saying that they can't see the stars, and then the other guys are like, oh yeah, of course you can see the stars.
You can see the stars from the moon, but there's a bunch of reasons why it's harder to see the stars. The moon is fully illuminated, and the lunar soil, the regolith, has like an almost perfect albedo, so the surface is just like a reflective white satin sheet. So there's a lot of light coming into your eyes, and your eyes are like really dilated. So from what I understand, in order to see the stars on the moon, you'd have to basically like stare at the sky for like 30 seconds and adjust your eyes.
The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
So he said, we no longer have the capability of going to the moon. And if you want me to show you again what that capability looks like, it looks like tape and, just real basic cardboard and stuff.
This fucking interview he's holding up in the air like proof of some insane, like, aberration is stupid. The Apollo 5 doesn't meet today's standards for a man-rated spacecraft. It's comparatively, it's a far more dangerous spacecraft than even the space shuttle. The problem is that the F1 engines on the Saturn V rocket, they were fucking made by hand. You couldn't rebuild that thing even if you wanted to. It's not safe enough. The Saturn V had known structural resonance issues, like it was prone to pogo oscillations. They had to plan the fucking flight profile to minimize a lot of that shit. It just wasn't a modern spacecraft. They can't just fucking rebuild it. And it's utter retardation, and it is just evidence of his confirmation bias. He's just picking random stuff out of the air that he's probably found on Reddit.
As it punches into Earth orbit, Orion will jettison its launch abort system. The abort system is a safety feature designed to pull Orion and its crew out of danger if there were a problem with the rocket during ascent.
It's a shakedown test. They're looking for fucking obvious issues. They're looking for electromagnetic interference. They're looking for radiation interference. You can have stray, fucking electrons that interfere with microcircuitry. You can actually have physical damage. Say a cosmic ray hits a hard drive platter. It can flip a bit on the hard drive platter, and you have one wrong bit. So it's important to test all this crap out, because you have to have enough redundancy and error correction and all that crap to be able to handle. And that's all part of radiation hardening.
60 years ago, we had it fine. It was all good. But now these are major challenges they have to accomplish.
So he's claiming that because they're talking about what the Orion capsule's doing and it's shakedown test, he's basically claiming that they're bragging about all these issues they've overcome. It means that they've not done it before, right? That's his logic. It's the dumbest thing. Every fucking piece of satellite hardware that's new, they basically put it inside a cyclotron and they fucking vomit electrons. They call it man-rated, when something's rated to take men into space.
We have so much money now. The amount of money that NASA has versus what the United States government had in 1969 is unbelievable. Elon Musk said that he would start taking people to the moon. He immediately shut down the project. Why? Because he realized we never went to the moon.
So basically he's thinking that NASA has more money now than they did back then. But back then, NASA had something insane, 4% of the total federal budget. And today it's less than 1%. Now the federal budget has grown, obviously, so that's not totally fair. But if you do the inflation adjusted math, they have about under 1/2 of what they were spending in 1965. But instead of sending probes to every planet and doing giant fucking space telescopes and cool shit, they're no, let's just build a space station. And by the way, it's going to cost $50 billion a year to keep in fucking space. So the ISS occupies a gigantic portion of their budget, and that's a chunk of money they can't put into building a giant heavy rocket.
Okay, we also have the technology to see the surface of the moon very clearly. Amateurs can now look up to the moon and get that close to it, and none of our stuff is up there. You might be able to see a crater that's called a landing site. You can't see any of the vehicles because they left the moon car thing up there. They didn't bring it home. You think they attached a little trailer?
Yeah, you can't see the fucking thing because you would need a telescope on Earth the size of fucking Delaware. You need an enormous telescope. And to resolve an object that small, you would need a lens or a mirror that's so impossibly large that it's beyond the scope of fucking mankind's engineering skills. But they do have pictures of it from orbit. The Japanese put a reconnaissance orbiter that just takes pictures and shit, and you can see it clear as day.
And then, so they go to the moon with less calculating power than a calculator, and with one iron rod, they shoot back a live TV footage through 290,000 miles of empty space and through the Van Allen belt. Okay, that's not possible.
Okay, so This is so fucking absurd and dumb. I cannot. I mean, to claim it's a fucking iron rod. What spaceship have you seen in science fiction that doesn't have a parabolic dish or some exotic looking antenna? The only antenna I can conceive of that might look like an iron rod, it's called like a axial mode helical antenna. It's basically just another directional antenna, like a Yagi antenna. They work better with like a high frequency, like microwave and up. That might look like a rod, and in fact, one of the scientific payloads they deployed at the surface of the moon had a axial mode antenna on it. So maybe he's looking at that. The lunar lander had a bunch of little radar dishes on it. Two of them are they're radar dishes. They're for ranging to the command module and the service module and basically reconnect up and then go back to Earth. The service module has 4 little fucking parabolic dishes to communicate. And to broadcast the signal from the surface of the moon, the LEM had what's called a Yagi antenna. So it's got a Yagi antenna on a gimbal, and that thing can aim at the Earth. So it's got a directional antenna. Granted, it's not sophisticated. It's not a super giant dish, but it doesn't have to be. And this is the thing with communicating the stuff in space. Thankfully, you can put all of the highly sensitive, heavy, complicated equipment on the ground. So it doesn't matter if the spacecraft is broadcasting a weak signal, maybe like 500 watts. It doesn't matter because your shit that's on the ground is so fucking sensitive and so powerful that you can still communicate with it.
If you've ever seen a TV station, which I've been at, morning TV, that's my whole career. So you go there, they have a giant dish with giant amounts of energy, and that is 50 fucking years later, right? But apparently not the moon lander. They had one little iron bar.
Even back then, they had 70-meter wide dishes that are the size of a football field. They collect a large cross-section of the sky, and they reflect it off that dish onto a what's called a waveguide. But yeah, the antennas they have on the Earth are what are sensitive. Like the stuff up there doesn't have to be powerful because you've got an insanely... I can't even explain how sensitive they are. Some of these beam waveguide antennas that NASA runs, they have a signal gain of 60 fucking decibels. And for anybody that's not familiar with what the fuck that means, it's equivalent to being able to amplify a signal 1 million times.